little bit of a non-verbal day today. Yesterday also. A lot of reflection, a lot of practice. But hey, what we're gonna do now is the last 2 hours of the day. Let's do the last bit of journaling and get back into outreach and lead gen. Stop for 1 second. Alright, let me film myself and listen to the podcast that we're going to launch.
Hey there and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into your notes on human behavior and psychology. It seems like you're really on this quest for self-discovery, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. You've provided this really fascinating collection of observations about how our minds work, especially how our experiences, particularly within families, really shape who we become.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. One recurring theme I see again and again is this idea of a blueprint, almost like a personal blueprint that's formed in childhood. It's like this hidden code that influences our values, our decisions, even our relationships.
It's true. And what's really interesting here is the emphasis you've put on the parent whose love felt the most, I guess elusive is the word. You suggest that this dynamic really impacts how our blueprint actually forms.
You know, it's funny, when I went back and was reading through my notes and saw that it really struck a chord with me. It's like we're just instinctively wired to seek out love and acceptance. And then when it feels scarce, we adapt. We come up with these strategies almost to try and earn it.
Exactly. And then those adaptations, those ways of being become so ingrained. Imagine like a child who learns that, expressing their emotions leads to rejection, right? They might start suppressing their feelings just to avoid conflict, carrying that pattern then into adulthood and having these big struggles with vulnerability and things like that.
It's like we're trying to navigate the present using these maps that were drawn in our past, even if those maps are outdated or even like leading us in the wrong direction.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really where those 7 master steps for lasting change that you mentioned in your notes come in. They really provide a framework for recognizing those patterns and then, rewriting that map.
Rewriting the map. I love that. Like we're hitting the refresh button on our internal operating system.
Precisely.
You also highlighted this really intriguing concept of vehicles. Can you talk a little more about what you meant by that?
Yeah. So vehicles are those things that we're always chasing after, right? External things that we start to rely on to fulfill our needs. Like, as an example, someone might use their career as a vehicle to feel significant, to feel valuable.
Right. So it's like almost that thing that we're always striving for.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens when that vehicle breaks down? Yeah. Or when it doesn't lead to the fulfillment that we think it will.
It's like trying to quench your thirst with salt water, right? You think you're addressing the need, but you're actually making it worse. Which makes me think about those 6 core needs that you mentioned in your notes. I think those are crucial to this whole conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Because your notes don't explicitly list all of the needs, but the implication is there. Unmet needs can fuel so much of our internal struggle and conflict. It's like we have this primal urge for security, connection, significance, and when those needs aren't met, it creates this ripple effect throughout everything. Our relationships, our careers, even our physical health.
Okay, so we've got this blueprint, we've got these vehicles, these needs. You also highlighted wounds in your notes too.
Yeah.
Like emotional wounds from childhood. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, and you noted several different types: abandonment, betrayal, criticism. And each one can really leave its mark, shaping the way that we see things and how we navigate the world.
Like those wounds create these blind spots, right?
They do.
Making us more sensitive to certain things, even if we're not really aware of why.
Right, exactly.
Like it's this subconscious thing that's always there.
Yeah.
So how do we break free? How do we break free from these cycles? How do we heal those wounds and start living, authentically?
And that's where those 7 master steps become really essential, because they offer that roadmap for understanding our wounds, challenging our beliefs, and then ultimately, rewriting those blueprints that we've been talking about for greater fulfillment.
Okay, this is already blowing my mind a little bit. We have a lot to unpack here. So let's start with those 7 steps. What's the first step? How can it help us understand these patterns that we keep repeating, often without even realizing it?
So the first step is really just about understanding your world, right? It's about shining a light on those unconscious patterns, those beliefs that are really driving everything, your thoughts, your feelings, even your behaviors.
It's like becoming an explorer, but of our own inner landscape, right? Like mapping out the terrain so we can navigate it more effectively.
That's a great way to put it. And this exploration really often starts with understanding that blueprint that we were just talking about. Going back to that dynamic that you were talking about earlier with the parent whose love felt the most difficult to earn. What messages did you internalize from that relationship looking back?
Thinking back on it, I can see how that one relationship really shaped what I believed about myself in a lot of ways. About, being worthy, being lovable. It's like I learned to equate receiving love with what I achieved. So I was constantly striving, constantly trying to prove myself.
And how do you think that pattern is showing up in your life today? In your relationships, in your career, in your relationship with yourself even?
Wow. That's a really powerful question. I can see how that old pattern of seeking validation from others, it's still there. Even though it's not really serving me anymore, it's definitely still there.
And that's exactly why this first step is so crucial, right? Because by becoming aware of these patterns, these blueprints that were handed to us, we can start to question them. We can challenge them, challenge their hold on us and our decisions, and ultimately we can choose something different, choose a different path for ourselves.
So it's not about blaming our parents or the past, really. It's about taking responsibility.
Exactly.
For our own growth, for our own healing.
It's about recognizing that while our past experiences have shaped us, they don't define us. We have the power to choose a different story for ourselves, to create a future that's more aligned with who we really are. And that's a powerful realization, isn't it? This idea that we have agency, that we can choose a different path.
Absolutely. But it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
How do we actually start breaking free from those deeply ingrained patterns?
Well, that's where the next step comes in, leveraging our motivation. You touched on this in your notes as well, especially the idea of using both positive and negative motivators to fuel change.
Right, like sometimes it's the fear of something negative happening that finally pushes us to make a change.
Precisely. And that's perfectly valid. It's about understanding what truly motivates us, what gets us fired up, even if it's not always, pretty or positive. It's about being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, totally. So it's not about denying our fears or insecurities, but about acknowledging them and then using them as fuel for growth. That makes me think of those 6 core needs we were talking about earlier. How do they play into all of this?
Ah, yes, those core needs. Remember, your notes imply that unmet needs are often at the root of so many of our struggles. It's like these needs are fundamental to our well-being, and when they're neglected, it creates this ripple effect throughout our lives.
Okay, so let's explore those needs a bit further. I'm really curious to see how they connect to these patterns we've been discussing.
Absolutely. Let's start with security. We all crave safety, stability, a sense of grounding in the world. It's a primal need.
And that makes total sense. When we feel secure, we can relax, open up, and thrive. But when that need is threatened, we go into survival mode.
Exactly. And your blueprint, shaped by those early experiences, might dictate how you seek that security. Some might seek it through external validation, constantly striving for approval, while others might withdraw, building walls to protect themselves from potential hurt.
So it's like we each have our own unique strategy for navigating the world based on what we've learned about safety and security.
Precisely. And that strategy might have served you well in childhood, but it can become a limiting belief in adulthood, preventing you from experiencing true intimacy and connection.
That's a really good point. It's like those old coping mechanisms, while well-intentioned, can actually sabotage our efforts to create the very things we crave.
Exactly. Which is why it's so important to bring awareness to these patterns, to understand how our past experiences might be shaking our present reality.
Okay, so security is a big one. What other core needs should we be aware of?
Well, connection is another powerful one, that deep-seated longing for belonging, for intimacy, for love. We are social creatures at our core.
Absolutely. We crave those meaningful connections with others.
And yet our blueprint might influence how we seek that connection. Some might crave constant attention and affirmation, fearing that without it they'll be abandoned or forgotten. Others might equate vulnerability with weakness, keeping their hearts guarded to avoid potential hurt.
It's like we're all trying to solve the same puzzle, but with different pieces and strategies. And sometimes those strategies, while well-intentioned, can actually sabotage our efforts to create fulfilling relationships.
Exactly. We might push away the very connection we crave because we're afraid of being hurt, rejected, or abandoned.
Which makes me think about those wounds we discussed earlier, Those emotional scars from childhood can play a significant role in how we approach relationships.
Absolutely. For instance, if someone experienced a deep betrayal in their childhood, perhaps from a caregiver who wasn't emotionally present, that wound might manifest as a fear of intimacy or difficulty trusting others.
It's like that old wound gets reactivated in adult relationships, creating a kind of self-sabotaging loop.
Precisely. And often we're not even consciously aware of this pattern. It's operating beneath the surface, driving our decisions and reactions.
So how do we break free from that? How do we heal those old wounds and start creating healthier, more fulfilling relationships?
That's where those 7 master steps become so essential. They provide a framework for understanding our wounds, challenging those limiting beliefs, and ultimately creating a new blueprint for our relationships.
Okay, so we've talked about security and connection. What are the other core needs that are influencing our behaviors and shaping our experiences?
Well, another significant one is significance, that desire to feel important, valued, respected. We all want to feel like our lives have meaning and that we're making a difference.
That resonates deeply. It's like that innate drive to contribute, to leave our mark on the world.
Exactly. And yet, our blueprints might dictate how we seek that significance. Some might chase achievements, accolades, external validation, while others might shy away from the spotlight, feeling like they're not good enough or that their contributions don't matter.
It's like some of us are wired to overachieve, while others are wired to underachieve, both stemming from that same core need for significance.
Oh, precisely. And often it's those early experiences, those messages we internalized in childhood that shape those patterns.
This is making me realize how much of our behavior is driven by these unconscious needs and beliefs. It's like we're all walking around with these hidden scripts, and we don't even realize we're following them.
Exactly. And that's why self-awareness is so crucial. The more we understand those scripts, those blueprints, the more power we have to rewrite them.
Okay, so we've covered security, connection, and significance. What are the other core needs we should be aware of?
Well, variety is a big one. We all have this innate need for novelty, for excitement, for new experiences. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly alive, truly engaged? It probably involves some element of novelty or challenge.
That's a really good point. It's like we're wired to seek out new experiences, to expand our horizons.
Exactly. And yet, if that need for variety isn't met in healthy ways, it can manifest in more destructive behaviors, like constantly seeking the next thrill or jumping from relationship to relationship without ever truly committing.
It's like we're trying to outrun our own emptiness. But true fulfillment comes from within, not from external pursuits.
Precisely. And that brings us to the next core need, growth. This is the need to learn, to expand, to evolve as individuals. We are not meant to stay stagnant.
That one's close to my heart. I'm definitely someone who thrives on learning new things, exploring new ideas, and challenging myself to grow.
And that's fantastic. When we nurture that need for growth, it can lead to incredible personal fulfillment. But when it's stifled, when we feel stuck or stagnant, it can lead to feelings of frustration, emptiness, and even depression.
It's like we're wired to evolve, and when we resist that natural impulse, we suffer.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final core need, contribution. This is the need to make a difference, to give back to the world, to leave it a better place than we found it.
This one's powerful. It's about connecting with something larger than ourselves, about using our unique gifts and talents to serve others.
Precisely. And that sense of contribution, of making a meaningful difference, can be incredibly fulfilling. It gives our lives a sense of purpose and direction.
So when we're living in alignment with these 6 core needs, security, connections, significance, variety, growth, and contribution, we're more likely to experience true happiness and fulfillment. It's like all the pieces of the puzzle finally click into place.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is where the blueprint comes back into play. We often develop strategies for meeting these needs in childhood that might not serve us well in adulthood.
So someone who learned to seek security through control might end up in relationships that feel suffocating. Or someone who equates significance with material possessions might find themselves constantly chasing the next big thing, never feeling truly satisfied.
Precisely. The key is to become aware of those patterns, those deeply ingrained beliefs and behaviors that are no longer serving us, and to consciously choose a different path.
And that's where those 7 master steps for lasting change come in, right? They provide a framework for transforming those old limiting patterns into empowering new ones.
Exactly. It's about rewriting the blueprint, creating a life that's in greater alignment with your deepest needs and desires.
It's like we're taking all of this amazing information we've uncovered about ourselves, our blueprints, our wounds, our core needs, and we're using it to create a new roadmap for our lives, one that leads to greater fulfillment, joy, and purpose.
Precisely. It's about stepping into our power as conscious creators of our own reality.
This is incredibly empowering, but I have to admit, it can also feel a bit overwhelming. Where do we even begin?
You're right, it can feel like a lot to process. But remember, it's a journey, not a race. And like any journey, it begins with a single step.
And that first step is understanding our world, right? Shining the light on those unconscious patterns and beliefs that are driving our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Exactly. It's about becoming aware of the forces that have shaped us so that we can start to make conscious choices about who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world.
This is incredibly powerful stuff. But before we dive deeper into those 7 master steps, let's take a quick pause. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Just kidding, we know you're hooked. And we're back. You know, it's amazing what we can uncover when we really take the time to go deep on these fundamental pieces of ourselves, like who we are at our core.
Yeah, it is remarkable, isn't it? All those blueprints, the wounds, the core needs, it's like they all weave together to make us who we are.
Totally. And speaking of threads, I keep seeing language patterns pop up in my notes too, and I think it's time we finally unpack that a bit.
Yes, language patterns are so fascinating because they really reveal how the way we talk to ourselves and others can either keep reinforcing those old blueprints or help us create brand new ones. It's powerful stuff.
So it's not just about what we're saying, it's how we're saying it.
Exactly. It's both. The words we use, they have so much power. They can uplift us or tear us down, empower us or keep us stuck. It really runs the gamut.
This actually makes me think about those 7 master steps for lasting change that we were talking about earlier. I'm wondering, how do these language patterns, how do they play into each of those steps?
That's a great observation. I mean, language patterns are woven into all of it, really. They can really support our journey every step of the way.
Perfect. So let's start with step 1 then, understanding our world. How can changing our language patterns actually help us with that initial step of self-awareness?
Okay, so think about it this way. Our thoughts, they're constantly shaping our reality, right? And how do we express those thoughts? Language. It's how we communicate them to ourselves in the world.
So if someone is constantly engaging in this negative self-talk, they're basically confirming all those negative beliefs just by saying them out loud.
It's like they're subconsciously writing this script for their lives, and it's all based on limitation and self-sabotage. And this is important, we can rewrite that script.
Wait, so just by changing our language?
Exactly. By becoming aware of that negative self-talk and then consciously choosing more empowering language, we can shift our mindset and start creating a totally different reality for ourselves.
Can you give me an example? What does that look like in real life?
Okay, so let's say someone always puts themselves down. They're saying, I'm not good enough, all the time. That's just feeding those negative beliefs. So what if instead of putting so much energy into their flaws, they focus on their strengths instead?
So instead of saying, I'm not good enough, it's like, okay, maybe I'm still learning and growing, but I'm proud of how far I've come. Something like that.
Exactly. It's such a subtle shift, but just by changing the language, they're changing their focus, their energy. It's replacing that old story with a new and more empowering one.
Wow. This is really making me realize how much power we have over our own minds. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like we've been given this incredible tool language and we can use it to build ourselves up or tear ourselves down. It's up to us.
I know, it's kind of mind-blowing. And honestly, the more aware we become of the language we're using, the easier it is to choose the words that uplift us, that inspire us, the words that support our growth.
Okay, this is so empowering. I love it. So we've talked about how important language is to understanding our world. But what about step 2, leveraging our motivation? How does that work?
Well, remember how we were talking about how fear can be a huge motivator for people?
Yes. Sometimes it's the fear of something bad happening that finally gets us to make a change, like a real kick in the pants.
Exactly. And we can use our language to either make that fear even bigger, or we can reframe it into something that empowers us.
Can you give me an example?
Totally. Let's say someone is terrified of public speaking, like completely terrified. If they just focus on everything that could go wrong, what if people judge me? What if I forget what I'm going to say? That fear is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and they're going to totally freeze up on stage if they keep thinking that way.
For sure. But what if instead of dwelling on the worst case scenario, they change their perspective a bit? What if they decide to be excited about it instead of afraid? It's a chance to share their message with the world, connect with people, make a difference.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective. I like that.
Totally. And language can make that shift happen. Instead of saying, I'm so scared of public speaking, it's, I'm excited to share my ideas. I'm excited to connect with people.
So just by changing the language, they're changing how they feel. They're turning fear into excitement.
Exactly. And that change in their emotional state, that can make all the difference in how they perform and what it feels like for them to get up there.
This is so cool. It's like we can literally reframe our fears just by choosing our words more carefully.
We can. And this applies to any area of our lives where we feel held back by fear, whether it's relationships, fear of failure, anything. We can use language to change our perspective and step into our power.
Okay, this is truly transformative stuff. Okay, on to step 3. Interrupting the pattern. How can language patterns help us with that? Breaking free from the thought patterns and habits that aren't working for us anymore.
Those blueprint beliefs that we were talking about before, the ones that often come from those childhood experiences.
Right, like I'm not worthy of love or I'm not good enough. Those limiting beliefs that we carry around.
Yes, exactly. Language can help us challenge those beliefs. When we can call them out for what they are, just thoughts, it's easier to see that they aren't necessarily true.
Okay, so if someone really struggles with feeling like they're not worthy of love, maybe they need to start asking themselves, what evidence do I have to back this up? Is this even true, or is this just a story I've been telling myself for years?
Exactly. And by questioning the beliefs, shining a light on them, they start to lose their grip on us a little,
Like we're deflating them, taking away their power.
Exactly. And as those beliefs lose their power, the patterns they create lose their power too. It opens us up to believing new things that serve us better.
I love that. It's like we have the power to rewrite the code of our own minds. And it sounds like language is the key to making that happen.
It is. It really all comes back to language.
Okay, I'm ready for step 4, clearly defining the problem. How do language patterns play into this?
So clearly defining the problem means getting really specific about what's going on. It's about reframing our challenges so they feel solvable, more empowering. And language is what helps us do that reframing.
Okay, can I get an example of this too?
Of course. So let's say someone is always procrastinating. Instead of just saying, ugh, I'm so lazy, what if they said, I'm having some trouble managing my time? It's a different way of looking at the problem.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The first one is just a judgment, a label that makes you feel bad. But the second one, it's like, okay, here's the problem, and now let's figure out how to fix it.
Exactly. They've reframed the problem, and now it feels more solvable. Now they can explore different time management techniques, break things down into smaller steps, ask for help from someone. The possibilities open up.
They've gone from passive victim to active problem solver.
Yes. And that shift, it's often because of the language they're choosing to use.
This is so helpful. I can think of so many times when I've used language that makes me feel stuck instead of empowered to find a solution.
It's a common pattern, but we can definitely change it if we're willing to put in the effort. The more we pay attention to the words we use and choose the ones that empower us, the more we can transform how we approach problems and start getting the results that we want.
Love it. This is amazing. Okay, step 5, empowering alternatives. What do we need to know about that?
Step 5 is all about exploring and experimenting with new beliefs and behaviors that are aligned with the life we want to create. And language is so important here because it helps us paint a really clear picture of that desired future, making it feel more real and possible.
So if someone's trying to be more loving toward themselves, they might come up with some positive affirmations to repeat every day. Things that really highlight their strengths and worthiness, almost like they're trying to reprogram their subconscious mind with new beliefs.
Yes, exactly. They can also use language to really visualize their ideal self. Imagine them acting and feeling in ways that reflect that self-love they're trying to cultivate.
So it's like creating this mental movie of their dream future, using language to make it come alive.
That's a great way to put it. And the more vivid and emotionally charged that movie is, the more likely it is to actually manifest in their life. Our minds are powerful.
This is powerful stuff. It's like we really can use language to tap into that creative part of our imaginations and change our reality.
It can. And this can work in any area of our lives where we're craving change, whether it's our health, relationships, careers. Language can help us close the gap between where we are now and where we want to be.
Okay, so if someone wants to find a loving partner, they can use language to help them do that.
Yes. They can visualize their perfect relationship, imagine what it feels like to be happy and connected and fulfilled.
Because by putting their energy and focus into those positive feelings, they're more likely to attract those experiences into their lives.
Precisely.
This is so inspiring. It's like we can create this magnet for positivity just with the things we say.
I love that. That's a great way to think of it. And the more we cultivate those positive emotions, the more we attract people who resonate with those same vibes.
Okay, we're on to step 6. Conditioning for success. What is that?
Conditioning for success is all about reinforcing those positive changes, making sure they actually stick. And the language we use plays a huge role in that.
So someone is trying to break free from that negative self-talk. Maybe they could surround themselves with positive affirmations instead. Write them down and put them all over the house as little reminders throughout the day.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get your friends and family involved too. Ask them to help hold you accountable to using more positive, empowering language.
It's like we're creating this positive feedback loop just with the words we use.
Yes. And the more we can reinforce those positive patterns, the more they become ingrained in us. We're training our brains to think and feel differently.
I love that. This is so empowering. Okay, we made it to the final step, aligning with purpose. How can we use language to connect with something bigger than ourselves?
Think of aligning with purpose as finding that thing in your life that gives you meaning and direction. It's about making sure your actions match your values and your dreams for your life. And language helps us articulate what that purpose is. It gives it a voice.
So if someone is really passionate about the environment, for example, they might write down a mission statement that clearly defines their goals, and they'll use language that inspires them and motivates them to take action.
Exactly. And they can share their purpose with other people. Use their words to inspire others to care about it too.
It's like creating this ripple effect of positive change just by talking about it.
Yes. And that's what it's all about, right? When we're living in alignment with our purpose and we share that with others, it gives us this energy and motivation we didn't have before. Things that used to feel impossible suddenly feel possible.
It's like we're finally living as our most authentic selves.
Yes. And that feeling, that sense of purpose,
Bit corny towards the end.
it can change our lives, and it can change the lives of those around us too. We inspire each other to be better, to live more authentically. It's amazing.
Wow. This has been such an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing all of these insights with me and with our listeners.
Of course, it's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you'll spend some time reflecting on what really resonated with you today. What kind of patterns have you noticed in your own life? What steps can you take, no matter how big or small, to move toward that greater fulfillment you're looking for? And remember, this journey of self-discovery, it never really ends. Every step you take, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. Until next time, keep on diving deep.
Absolutely incredible, man. Let's see if there's any good. Inner conflicts.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready to explore what makes us tick?
Always excited to dive into these fascinating topics.
Me too. And today we're really going deep, folks, with these excerpts from the CLC Journal.
It's amazing, really, full of stories and techniques that just challenge how we see ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly, like we're getting this insider's look at human behavior, but not just from a textbook, from real stories.
It's almost like therapy in action,
Right. So much of what we see out there is about labeling people, judging their actions as good or bad. But this journal,
It goes deeper.
yeah, it's all about understanding the why behind the what.
Precisely. It's not about judging actions as good or bad, but rather understanding the deeper needs and motivations behind them.
Okay, so it's about understanding the why, but how does that work in practice? Like the journal talks about this parts intervention thing.
That's where things get really interesting. It's like Imagine different parts of your personality, almost like characters within you, each with their own voice and motivations.
Okay, like an inner
Exactly. There's the good girl, the rebel, the inner critic, all those voices we have in our heads. And parts intervention. It's like having a conversation with these different parts to understand their roles in your life.
So instead of feeling like you're fighting yourself,
Yeah.
battling those voices,
It becomes about understanding them.
working with them. I like it.
And you might be surprised to find that even the parts that seem negative actually have positive intentions.
Really. Even like the inner critic that's always telling us we're not good enough.
Even that one, it's usually trying to protect you in some way, even if it's misguided. Maybe it's trying to motivate you to do better or avoid past hurts.
Dude!
Wow, that's a new way to think about it. It's like these parts are trying to help us, just not always going about it in the best way.
Exactly. They're doing their best with the information they have.
This is already blowing my mind. Can I
Right.
get into a story? See how this actually works in someone's life?
Let's talk about Suki.
Suki, all right, what's her story?
So she's described as this high achiever, successful on the outside, checking all the boxes, but struggling to experience genuine joy. Like she's living by a script, but it's not the one that brings happiness.
Ooh, yeah. I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of going through the motions, but still feeling like something's missing.
Right. Like you're achieving, but not really living.
So what's going on with Suki? What's the why behind her story?
Well, the therapist uncovers this dominant good girl part that emerged in her childhood. Seems it was a way to navigate a difficult relationship with her father.
Ah, so even from a young age, we're creating these coping mechanisms, these parts, to deal with our environment.
We're incredibly adaptable beings, aren't we?
And while these parts can be super helpful, even crucial for survival, it sounds like they can also create these roadblocks later in life, especially if we're not aware of them.
Exactly. We become so used to operating from these old patterns that we don't even realize they're no longer serving us.
So how did the therapist work with Suki's good girl part?
He actually had her talk to it directly, asking questions like, what do you need? What are you afraid of?
Hold on. So he had her have a conversation with this part of herself.
You got it. Giving a voice to that inner character.
Wow. And what happened?
Through that dialogue, Suki realizes that her good girl, while seemingly positive, is actually driven by a fear of failure and a need for approval. Which makes sense, right? Given her childhood experiences.
It's like her past is still driving her present, even if she's not aware of it.
And it's keeping her stuck in a cycle of perfectionism that's ultimately robbing her of joy.
Okay, so that's powerful stuff. It's like uncovering a hidden script running in the background of our lives. But the big question is, how do you change that script?
That's where things get really transformative. The therapist guides Suki to connect with another part, a part he calls her passion.
Passion. I like the sound of that.
Right. And this part represents her authentic self, her deepest desires and dreams, the things that light her up.
So it's about identifying and embracing those parts of ourselves that we might have pushed aside or silenced.
Exactly. And this is where the real transformation begins for Suki. He helps her see how embracing her passion could bring more joy and fulfillment into her life, even if it means challenging the good girl's need for safety and control.
So it's not about getting rid of the good girl altogether. It's about finding a balance.
Exactly. It's about creating a more harmonious relationship between all the different parts of ourselves.
That's incredible. I'm already hooked on Suki's story, but I know the journal also mentions a woman named Lisa. What can you tell us about her?
Lisa's story dives into the profound impact of early childhood experiences and how they can shape our behavior patterns. She grew up with a strict father.
Well, that can definitely leave its mark.
Absolutely. And as a result, she learned to suppress her emotions, adopting a more, well, how should I put it, masculine energy to cope.
It sounds like she learned to armor up to protect herself emotionally.
Exactly. And while that armor might have been necessary at the time, it's now preventing her from fully connecting with her femininity and experiencing true vulnerability.
It's amazing to me how these patterns we develop in childhood can follow us into adulthood, even if we're not consciously aware of them.
They become so ingrained, so automatic that we don't even realize they're there until something happens that forces us to confront them. It really highlights how adaptable we are, right? Like how we create these ways of coping to navigate tough situations early on, but then sometimes those exact mechanisms trip us up later down the line.
Totally. So we're seeing the why behind Suki's drive for achievement and Lisa's difficulty with being vulnerable. But how do you actually change something so deeply rooted? Like the journal mentions reframing.
Reframing, yeah. It's powerful. You take a belief that's causing someone pain or holding them back, and you basically help them see it through a totally different lens.
Got any examples from the journal?
Absolutely. There's a story about a woman named Patricia who's really struggling with anxiety and fear, especially when it comes to her boss. She's convinced she's going to be stuck in this worry loop forever.
Oof, I've been there.
Right. It's the worst. But instead of just agreeing with her fear, the therapist, he does something unexpected.
What do you do?
He says something like, imagine yourself 32 years from now, still consumed by this worry. What a waste of a life that would be. It's like, whoa.
That's calling it like it is.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be a wake-up call for Patricia.
Right. He's raising the stakes, helping her see the cost of holding on to this fear, and then he takes it even further and reframes the whole situation.
How so?
He suggests that maybe, just maybe, her boss's behavior isn't about her at all, but about his own unmet needs. Like maybe he's craving freedom or love.
Wow, that's a huge mind shift. It's not about blaming the boss, but it's not about Patricia taking it all personally either. It's about looking at the bigger picture, the deeper dynamics going on.
And that understanding, that space between you and the story you're telling yourself, it can be incredibly liberating.
So it's recognizing that sometimes the way we're interpreting a situation, the stories we tell ourselves, can keep us stuck.
100%. And this whole idea of reframing, of shifting perspectives, it's a recurring theme in the journal.
I bet. It seems like such a versatile tool.
It really is. He uses a similar approach with Lisa. Remember her? Stuck in that pattern of over-controlling her relationships.
Right, stemming from those experiences with her father in childhood.
Exactly. Learning to suppress her emotions and lead with that, masculine energy. So the therapist helps Lisa see that her need for control isn't about being bossy. It's actually a form of fear.
Fear of.
Fear of not being loved or respected if she's not the one calling the shots. And that fear, ironically, is leading her to recreate the exact dynamic she's trying to avoid. It's like, ouch, that's gotta hurt.
It's like she's pushing people away without even realizing it, just by trying to hold on too tight.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how the therapist then uses Lisa's love for her son as a motivator for change.
Okay, how does that work?
He guides her to imagine herself in her son's shoes and to see how her patterns might impact his future relationships.
So it's not just about personal transformation. It's about the ripple effects our patterns have on those we love, especially our kids. That's huge.
And effective. The journal mentions that this really clicked with Lisa. It became bigger than just her. It was about wanting something different, something better for her son.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of connecting with values, what about Jessica's story? Remember, she was using sadness to get her needs met, which wasn't doing her marriage any favors.
Yeah.
How does the therapist handle that?
This is where his ability to connect with people on a deeper level really shines through. He gently and compassionately helps Jessica see that while what she wants, love and attention, are totally valid, her actions are having the opposite effect.
Pushing her husband and children away instead of drawing them closer?
Exactly. It's like, ouch, that's a tough pill to swallow. To realize you're unknowingly sabotaging the very thing you want most.
Absolutely. But it's also a turning point. So what happens? How does he help her bridge that gap?
This is where it gets really interesting. Knowing that Jessica is a spiritual person, he asks her, do you believe in God? What do you think God wants us to be or do with our lives? Punish people.
Wow, he's not shying away from the big questions.
Not at all. He's meeting her where she is, using her faith to help her see things from a fresh perspective. He's not telling her what to believe. He's guiding her to connect with her own values.
I love that. And to see that real fulfillment, lasting joy, it comes from a different place than she's been looking.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not about perpetuating those cycles of pain and punishment, but about choosing love and contribution as your guiding principles.
It's like he's reframing her relationship with her own faith.
Exactly.
Helping her see it as a source of strength and empowerment instead of something that's being used to justify her sadness.
Exactly. He's helping her tap into the power of her own beliefs to create a more positive and fulfilling reality for herself and her family. And what's really interesting is that the therapist doesn't just stop at these conversations, these aha moments.
There's more. What else does he do?
He gives his clients homework.
Homework. Like actual assignments.
Yeah. But not what you'd expect. It's not about reading chapters or writing essays. It's more like experiments encourage little nudges to step outside their comfort zones.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So what kind of experiments are we talking about here?
Well, remember Jessica, stuck in that pattern of using sadness to connect with her family.
Yeah, and how the therapist helped her tap into her faith as this source of strength and love.
Right. So building on that, he gives her this, well, unconventional homework assignment.
Hit me. What's the assignment?
He tells her to focus on her husband's pleasure.
Wait, really? I gotta be honest, that sounds a little, outside the box.
It does, right. But here's the thing. In the context of their sessions, it totally makes sense. It's not about what you might be thinking. It's about helping Jessica shift her focus from her own needs to her husband's.
Oh, I see. To break free from that me pattern and step into a more giving, loving space in her marriage.
Exactly. To actually put those values of love and generosity into action, not just talk about them.
Brilliant.
And how did that go over? I mean, it sounds like it could go either way.
The journal notes say it was a game changer for her. It wasn't easy by any means, but it forced her to show up differently in her marriage.
To choose a different path. It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world. Or in this case, be the change you want to see in your relationship.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of these homework assignments. They're all about shaking things up, challenging those old tapes that are playing in our heads, and giving people a taste of what's possible when they step outside those comfort zones.
I love that. So we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. It's amazing how much richness there is in these stories, these real-life examples. As we start to wrap up here, what are some key takeaways our listeners can walk away with today? What can they really use in their own lives?
You know, the biggest one for me is this. We are not our patterns. We are so much more than our past experiences, our insecurities, our fears. We have a choice in how we let those patterns shape us.
We have the power to rewrite the script. I love that.
Yes. We can reframe our beliefs, choose a different ending to our story. It all starts with awareness, though.
Becoming aware of the patterns, understanding where they came from, and seeing how they might be holding us back.
Exactly. And then, with a little curiosity and a whole lot of compassion, we can start to work with those parts of ourselves, challenge them, reframe them, and choose a different path.
And sometimes that path leads us to some pretty interesting places. Unconventional homework assignments, tough conversations with ourselves, but hey, that's where the good stuff happens, right?
Absolutely. Outside that comfort zone is where the magic is, where the real growth and transformation takes place. It's a journey worth taking.
It absolutely is. This has been an incredible deep dive, so many thought-provoking ideas. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Until next time, remember, keep asking why, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep. Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Ever feel like,
You've got a whole committee in your head,
and they can't agree on where to eat?
let alone the big life choices.
We're diving into inner conflict today with this source.
What's a self-help book?
What's fascinating is how this source breaks down conflict systematically.
More like a field guide to the inner battlefields of our minds.
It's not just, I want this, but I should do that.
It's about the interplay of our needs.
Values, even the energy, physical, emotional, mental, that we're running on at any given moment.
Okay, so less about silencing the peanut gallery in our heads.
More about understanding why they're each shouting different advice.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think of it like this.
You stumble across a hidden chamber in an ancient temple.
This source is like the archaeologist's journal.
All right, that was not enough context. This is good to know. Give it precisely, really good context. Delete that. Remove. Beliefs. Man. You got to give it a lot of context. Yeah, man, there's something in there. Oh, this is brilliant. This is just really good. Wow.
In
another episode here. So actually, how does it sound with like healing music in the background? Let's see.
Hey there, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know, we love getting to the core of things, and today is no exception.
Nope.
We are diving deep into the fascinating world of belief change.
That's right.
Have you ever wondered why you believe what you believe and how to actually shift those deeply ingrained thoughts?
It's a journey we all go on, right? And we're going to unpack some insightful notes from someone who seems to have spent a lot of time thinking about how we form beliefs, and maybe even more importantly, how we can change them.
It's like we're about to unlock a treasure chest of techniques for understanding the mind.
Yeah.
One of the things that really jumped out at me was the emphasis on the connection between our emotions and our beliefs.
Yeah, it's like that gut feeling you get, right? We often talk about having a sense about something.
Right.
This suggests that our emotions play a huge role in shaping what we believe to be true.
It reminds me of that feeling you get when you walk into a room and instantly sense the energy, even if you can't quite put it into words.
Exactly. Our intuition speaks volumes, often through our emotions. These notes suggest that if we want to understand a belief, we need to trace it back to its emotional roots. It's about uncovering the why behind the what.
So, for example, if someone constantly doubts their abilities and believes they're not good enough, that belief might stem from a childhood experience where their efforts weren't acknowledged or valued.
Precisely. That early experience might have created an emotional imprint that continues to influence their beliefs and behaviors even years later. They might even shy away from opportunities or downplay their accomplishments, subconsciously reinforcing that old belief.
It's like those beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. That's where this whole idea of secondary gain comes in, right? The notes mention that sometimes we hold on to beliefs, even if they cause us pain or hold us back, because there's some sort of hidden benefit.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
It's almost counterintuitive.
It is. It's like someone who claims they're too busy to pursue their passions. That busyness, while maybe stressful, might actually be a way to protect themselves from the fear of failure or judgment.
Wow, that's a really powerful insight. It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion here, getting to the heart of why we believe what we believe. So how do we start to challenge and change these deep-seated beliefs? Because it feels like some of them are so ingrained, so automatic.
Absolutely. And these notes offer a variety of techniques. One that comes up again and again is the idea of reframing.
Reframing. I've heard that term before, but how does it apply to our beliefs?
Think of it like this. You have a picture, and you decide to put it in a different frame. The picture itself stays the same, but the new frame can completely change how you see it, right?
That's a great analogy. It helps make it more tangible.
Exactly. And with beliefs, it's about shifting your perspective, looking at the same situation or thought through a new lens. For instance, instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you might reframe it as, I'm still learning and growing in this area. It's a subtle shift, but it can have a huge impact.
It's like giving yourself permission to be a work in progress, to embrace the journey of growth and learning.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, there was also this intriguing section in the notes about mirror principles.
Yes.
It sounds pretty profound.
It is a powerful concept. It essentially suggests that the things we react strongly to in others often reflect something within ourselves.
You mean like if I'm constantly annoyed by people who are always late, it might be because deep down I have a fear of being out of control. Control or disappointing others.
Precisely. The notes propose that we can use these mirrors as incredible tools for self-awareness. It's like these reflections are offering us valuable clues about our own beliefs and patterns, nudging us to explore those aspects of ourselves that might need attention and transformation.
That's amazing. It's like our interactions with others can be these incredible opportunities for growth and self-discovery if we know how to look at them. Now, these notes you have are full of so many fascinating tools and techniques. It's like a toolbox for the mind. Is there anything else that stood out to you that we should dive into?
Absolutely. There's this whole section about using conversational techniques as a way to gently and effectively shift beliefs. Are you ready to explore that?
Absolutely. Let's unravel the art of conversation as a tool for personal transformation. So where it gets really interesting.
These conversational techniques are fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like turning a casual chat into a powerful tool for transformation.
Right.
The notes emphasize asking questions that encourage you to examine the evidence behind your beliefs.
It's like putting those beliefs on trial, right?
Exactly.
Cross-examining them to see if they hold up under scrutiny.
Yes.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is you're not trying to force yourself to believe something different overnight.
Right.
It's about gentle inquiry, about
Yeah.
creating a space for curiosity and exploration.
So what kind of questions might we ask ourselves or others when we're trying to shift a belief? Give us some examples.
One powerful question is simply, is that always true? For example, if you're holding on to the belief, I'm not good at relationships, asking yourself, is that always true, can help you uncover exceptions to the rule.
Right. Because there are always exceptions. There might be certain relationships where someone thrives even if they've had challenges in other areas of their life.
Precisely. And by focusing on those exceptions, you start to chip away at the belief's hold on you. Another powerful question is, what if the opposite were true?
Oh, I like that one. It's like flipping the script. So instead of, I'll never find my dream job, it becomes, what if I'm just one step away from landing my dream job?
Exactly. It opens up your thinking to possibilities you might not have considered otherwise.
Yeah.
And sometimes just by asking that question, you start to see things differently. You begin to notice opportunities that were always there, but you couldn't see them because you were so focused on the limiting belief.
It's like those beliefs can create blind spots, can't they? They prevent us from seeing the bigger picture, the possibilities that surround us.
Absolutely. And these conversational techniques act like little cracks in the armor of those limiting beliefs. They let the light shine through.
Well, like that.
The notes also mention using humor and metaphors in these conversations.
Sure.
It's about making it fun, engaging, and relatable.
It's true. People are more receptive to new ideas when they don't feel like they're being lectured to. It's about creating a safe and supportive space for exploration and growth.
Exactly. And speaking of creating a space for growth, there's a fascinating technique in here about changing the relationship you have with a belief, particularly one that's causing you distress.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. How do you actually change your relationship with a belief?
It starts by noticing where that belief shows up in your life and how it affects you emotionally. Let's say you're struggling with the belief, I'm not worthy of love.
That's a tough one. A lot of people struggle with that.
Absolutely. So you might start by simply acknowledging the belief's presence. You might say to yourself, there's that familiar feeling of unworthiness again. I see you.
Instead of trying to push it away or pretend it's not there, you're creating space for it.
Exactly. And as you create that space, you can start to explore it with curiosity. You might ask yourself, when did this belief first take root? What purpose did it serve at the time? Often these limiting beliefs developed as a way to protect us or make sense of the world when we were younger.
It's like they were doing their best to keep us safe, even if they're no longer serving us in the present moment.
Exactly. And as you explore the belief with compassion and an understanding, you might find that it starts to lose its grip on you. You're no longer so afraid of it or controlled by it.
It's like you're taking back your power, reclaiming your right to choose the beliefs that empower you. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious about something. We've talked a lot about techniques for shifting beliefs, but what about those times when it feels incredibly challenging to let go, even when we know a belief is holding us back? What advice do these notes offer for navigating those moments?
That's a great question, and it's something a lot of people struggle with. You see, there's another powerful concept woven throughout these notes that I think can offer some guidance. It's the idea of self-compassion. Are you ready to explore that?
Absolutely. Self-compassion is so essential. Let's dive in. So we're diving into the realm of self-compassion.
Right.
It's something we hear a lot about these days, but how does it actually play into this process of belief change? It feels like it would be easy to get down on ourselves when we're struggling to let go of beliefs that are no longer serving us.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to fall into that trap of self-criticism. But these notes emphasize that self-compassion is not about letting ourselves off the hook or ignoring the things we want to change. It's about recognizing that we are all works in progress, and we're all doing the best we can with what we have in each moment.
It's like offering ourselves the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a close friend or loved one who is struggling.
Exactly. And when we approach ourselves with that kind of gentle understanding, it becomes easier to let go of judgment and embrace the process of change.
It's like that saying, progress, not perfection. We're all on a journey, and there will be bumps along the way.
Absolutely. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do when we're feeling stuck is to simply acknowledge the struggle with kindness. We might say to ourselves, this is hard and I'm feeling frustrated, but it's okay. I'm still worthy and I'm still capable of growth.
It's about shifting from a place of self-criticism to a place of self-support. It's like being our own best cheerleaders. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the incredible world of beliefs, what's the most important takeaway you hope listeners will walk away with today? What's the key to unlocking the transformative power of belief change?
You know, if there's one thing I hope listeners remember, it's that they have more power than they realize.
Yes.
Our beliefs are not set in stone. We have the ability to examine them, to challenge them, and ultimately to choose the beliefs that empower us to create the lives we desire and deserve.
It's about recognizing that we're not just passive recipients of our thoughts. We have the power to shape them, to mold them, and to create a belief system that supports our highest growth and fulfillment. That's incredibly empowering.
It is, and it all begins with awareness. By simply paying attention to our thoughts, to the stories we tell ourselves, we can start to identify the beliefs that are holding us back and those that are propelling us forward. It's a journey of self-discovery, and it's a journey worth taking.
So true. Well, on that inspiring note, it's time for us to surface from this deep dive into the amazing world of belief change. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, remember, you have the power to choose your beliefs, and in doing so, you have the power to shape your reality. We'll catch you on our next deep dive adventure.
Almost ready. Well, let's go.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We're going to be uncovering some fascinating insights into your mind, your patterns, how you can really, unlock that amazing potential that's maybe hidden just below the surface.
Yeah, it's like we're going backstage, behind the curtain, to look at those inner workings. Like you said, the why behind our thoughts, feelings, actions. It's exciting.
It really is. So to kick things off, get this, we've been digging through a bunch of sources, and one concept that keeps popping up are these, get this, mirror laws. Basically, it's this idea that the things that really bug us about other people, or even those strengths we admire, maybe they're actually telling us something about ourselves.
It's true. And the best part is this isn't about judging others, right? It's about self-discovery. Like we're holding up a mirror, but to our own strengths and, dare I say, our shadows.
Okay, yeah, that's giving me chills. So let me see if I'm getting this right. If I'm constantly frustrated by someone, let's say they're always late, maybe that means, well, deep down I need to work on my own patience.
Precisely. Or here's another one. If you find yourself drawn to someone's confidence, charisma, maybe it's a reflection of that same potential within you just waiting to be unleashed.
Wow, I love that. So it's like those people, we admire, they're like walking, talking billboards, but the billboards are advertising qualities we might not even realize we have. This is exciting. But okay, there's always a but, right? Our sources also talk about these, get this, psychological blueprints that we develop super early, like way back.
Right, like this invisible script. It's often written in our childhood, and it's fascinating how much it influences how we navigate the world.
So just to be clear, we're saying that our childhood experiences, especially those with family, can actually shape our beliefs and even our behaviors years and years later. So for example, if someone grew up with a parent who's constantly criticizing them, they might internalize that voice and then as an adult become overly self-critical.
Exactly. And that's where things can get, a little tricky, because we might actually unconsciously recreate those dynamics, those familiar dynamics from our past in our adult relationships. Even if, and this is key, even if those patterns aren't really serving us well anymore.
It's like that example from one of the sources, right? The woman who kept finding herself drawn to partners who were emotionally unavailable, and then bam, it turns out it was mirroring a pattern from her relationship with her father, right?
It's kind of incredible when you think about it. These early experiences, they can leave such a lasting imprint. But, and here's the good part, here's the empowering part. When we become aware of these patterns, it's like the first step to breaking free. We're not talking about blaming our pasts, not at all. This is about understanding how it might be impacting our present.
So we're carrying around these blueprints, right? Sometimes we bump into the same old patterns and we don't even realize it. What's really cool though is what we can do about it. Our sources say, once we know what the blueprints are, we can actually rewrite them.
That's right. We're not stuck repeating the past. We have choices. We can challenge these old beliefs that hold them back. You know the ones.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, we've all got those negative thoughts, right? Like, I'm not good enough or I'll never actually succeed. It's like, they're just there.
It's like they become these self-fulfilling prophecies, right? If you believe you can't do it, you probably won't even try.
That's so true. And some of the sources described it in a really interesting way. They talked about being trapped in this prison, but we built it ourselves, or we're wearing blinders, so we literally can't see our own potential. It's kind of dramatic, but it makes sense.
Totally. But the good news is we can take the blinders off. We just have to remember these beliefs are just thoughts. They're not actually the truth. You know what I mean?
For sure. But how do we actually do that? Okay, yeah, it's a limiting belief. Okay, great. How do you really shift something that's so deeply ingrained in your thinking? It's gotta be tough, right?
It definitely takes effort, but it's possible. One technique that really resonated with me from the sources was this. Put those negative thoughts on trial. Seriously. Like, ask yourself, is this even true? What evidence do I have?
I love that. Cross-examining your own inner critic.
Exactly. Often when you really look at those negative thoughts, what do you find? They're usually based on old stuff, fears, assumptions, old stories that might not even be true anymore.
We've outgrown those stories, but they just won't leave us alone. So, okay, let's say we're challenging these beliefs, rewriting the old scripts. What happens next? How does that actually unlock our potential?
It's kind of magical. It creates space. Now we can be our authentic selves, embrace our strengths, go after what we want with confidence.
This is giving me chills again. We're shedding those old layers, stepping into, the light. And the sources talk about it as self-discovery, but it's more than that, right? It's self-creation. We're not just figuring out who we are, but who we can be, who we're capable of becoming. So much to think about. We're creating ourselves. That's a powerful thought. But how do we actually do it? How do we start living from this place of, authenticity, living up to our potential? What are the steps?
Well, one of the sources talked about this idea of, it's called reframing. Basically, you take those negative thoughts we were talking about and you make a conscious choice to see them differently.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of reframing, but can you give me like a real example?
Yeah.
How would you actually use it?
Sure. Let's say you're dealing with a fear of failure, which a lot of us do, right? So instead of letting it totally paralyze you, you could try reframing it. Think of it as a chance to learn and grow.
It's like instead of focusing on the negative, you're looking for the good, kind of. What's the opportunity here?
Exactly. And another big part of this whole self-creation journey, something our sources really emphasize, is self-compassion.
Oh, self-compassion, yeah. I mean, we hear that a lot these days, but what does that actually mean? And how does it, like, fit into all of this?
It's simple, really. Just treat yourself with the same kindness you'd show a good friend. We're often so much harder on ourselves than anyone else, you know?
Totally.
That's okay.
It's like we're our own worst critic sometimes. Actually, a lot of the time. But so, less criticism, more compassion. How does that help?
Think about it. Self-criticism, that's what usually keeps us stuck. But when you're compassionate with yourself, you're basically saying it's okay to mess up. It's okay to not be perfect. It gives you the space to grow and change.
It's like we're giving ourselves permission to, I don't know, be human, I guess.
Let's make one
Which is
for-
important because we're not perfect, right? So we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive. It's been, wow, really thought-provoking. What's the one thing, if you had to pick, that you want our listeners to really take away from all of this?
You are not powerless. You have the power to create the life you want, a life you really desire. It starts with understanding that blueprint we talked about, then challenging those limiting beliefs and never forgetting to be kind to yourself along the way.
It's a journey, for sure.
Yeah.
And I love that we have the
Turned it
power.
around. That was good, Eddie. That was a
So good.
really decent ending.
Well, that's about it for today's deep dive. We hope this is giving you some really interesting things to think about, maybe even inspired you to, start creating that blueprint for the life you truly want. Thanks for listening, everyone.
It's Sunday, and Sunday is fun day, so we're going to watch my own content. It's easy, sitting here still in my boxer shorts, putting on a white shirt, pretending to be professional and up working since 5 a.m. But I've laid in bed until probably 8:20. Went back to bed for a while, watched some Trump YouTube videos yesterday. Just one interview with Elon Musk, which I do sometimes, in order to be able to predict what is going to happen, to get a sentiment of where things are at. Just get a sentiment of where things are at. It's good. It's good information sometimes. Didn't spend more than an hour. I watched my own content one more time. And now we're going to watch the content of the course, which I'm so happy and glad about. Just walked around a little bit in my place, telling my own story for the first time in this precise and concise way. I know I've spent a lot of hours with it, but I also know that I've spent a lot of hours practicing speaking. 10,000 hours in introspection, and probably another 10,000 hours between reading books and speaking. That probably is accurate. Although I really haven't done as much speaking practice as I've done reading books, really. So, yeah, we're catching up right now, and we are just living every day, every single day, going forward and having fun and having faith and fixing my life, because all of the things that need to be done is waking up and wife. WW, the two biggie W's. It is so easy. Oh, ja, wie cracks. It's a Wirbelsäule, yeah, it is easy. I sometimes really need those days and these times on the weekend, just going over my own content. I know we got to speed run and do outreach, and we will do that next week, but just trusting the process, because I know that I am really on my way and on the process. So without further ado, we're gonna watch it now.
Welcome back. Now I believe this can be the most important slide in this, not this entire module, but the entire course, because this comes to the root of the fundamental misconception, and this is the following. The reason why you bought this course is the reason why what you've learned here won't work for you. And what I mean by that is this. Both of those motivations, on one hand, to buy the course, and then the trouble that you have implementing that, arise from the same root cause of us, in this case also you, wanting to be different than you are. You know, we've gone in depth in that. There's a deep core wound in the psyche of every human being that we want to be different than we actually are. And for this reason, we believe, you know, I need and want to be more alive. Therefore, I buy this course. And with changing the way I go about my life, I will become more alive. See, that's the belief you probably started out with. You want to become more alive. But the truth is, in accepting where we start out from and working with the feelings, we unearth our aliveness that is right here and right now. You see, it's not about becoming, it is about realizing, recognizing, rediscovering what is already here. There's nothing that you lack right here and something needs to be added on top. It is to rediscover what is already here by stripping away the extraneous that distracts us from that. So this is the most fundamental misconception why implementing all those things won't work, and also why so many people struggle to actually make their life great and make real improvements in their life. And that's why I believe it's the most important thing, one more time. Because if it comes from a place of I want to be different than I am, then you're doomed to fail. Because life tells you, no, listen, you've got to be yourself. You've got to be okay with who and what you are right here and right now. And then the changes go automatic. So in implementing all of that, I will urge you to please inquire which place within myself am I coming from. From a place of I want to be different than I am right now, and then it's fine. You see that? It's a deep wound that we all carry inside, a deep kind of motivation to be different than we are. No problem, but we need to observe that and we see through this illusion. You see, there's nothing to become, only to rediscover. So basically, with this last or second last module, I would like to, educate you that actually you did not need in the first place to buy this course. So the purpose of this module is to make this entire practice of the course unnecessary for you because you know how it works. And now when you think back at the time where you bought this course, the place where you were in, like emotionally, mentally, realizing this from that place, okay, it is not about becoming more alive, becoming different than I am. It is starting with what is right here and right now and feeling that through. And in this way, we become more alive. Do you see that? So the entire practice of this course was that you get to realize that it starts right here and right now. And there is nothing in the future to become more alive. Yes, you will, but not as an outcome, not as a kind of goal, as we shall see in the next videos. So starting with right here, the now, what is right here, this present emotion, this present thought, is the entry gate to aliveness. Otherwise, aliveness cannot be reached, cannot be uncovered, so to speak, unearthed. So, and when you struggle implementing that, you will see that it comes from the place of I want to be different than I am. And if we see through that, then the implementation goes by itself and becomes easy. So inquire about that. Which place am I coming from? This is probably the most important slide in this entire module and maybe the most important thing influencing your life at all, where it works out and where it doesn't. Because when we want to be different than we are, life pushes us back into being ourselves. So it destroys our illusions so that we get to realize, okay, I was delusioned in this way. The only way that actually makes sense and feels right is to be myself. And that means not to look to become something different than you are, but to be okay with what is right here and right now, surrender, and then let the change that wants to happen, let it happen through you, but don't look for the change anymore. Look for what is right here and right now. That's it. This is it. See you in the next video. Hello and welcome back. Now, before we go into the practice,
Actually, what we
like
need
the
to be
practices,
doing is that
kind of
this
the
is the
tactics,
intro
so to speak,
to
of
day
how to
50.
implement those 4 modules on emotions, on body sensations, of intuition, and of the deeper sentiments, we want to be talking about the overall life strategy. Something to think about, something to take in, let it sink in, and to reflect about. Not to say, okay, this is the way I need to see it, but this is at least the way I see it, and maybe you can borrow some of that for yourself, because it really aids in the process of implementing that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sharing that, and it wouldn't be practical for this module. So let it sink in. There's no outcome attached to that, but see if you can integrate something of that. So the point of life is to have fun, but the trap is the dependence on fun for fulfillment. You see, the point of life basically is to do what you love, and then base the decisions that you make on your heart. Feel it out. Feel what's right for you, and this is where you base your decisions on. And you just do what you like. And in this, you become naturally good at something. And then it's about enriching other people's life with what it's fun for you to do, which is based on the guidance of the heart and which you're good at. And in this way, I mean, life, first and foremost, is to have fun. Why would you do something that's not fun to you? But here's the key distinction. It's not to see life in a hedonistic way, like I need to have fun, otherwise my life is meaningless. With fun, I mean doing something that you love, that you enjoy. I mean, what else would you do in life, apart from doing what you enjoy? But to look for the fun, like, I wish I had more fun, or this is the misunderstanding. Then it actually shows you that you do some things that are not fun to you, and in order to compromise, or like to what's the word for that? To kind of undo that, or to balance that out, so to speak. You do something that's fun in order to balance out the things that are not fun, that you're kind of forcing yourself to do. So dependence on fulfillment, on fun for fulfillment, is not what I mean by life is about to have fun. But what else would you do, as I said, Do what you love, find out what you truly like, and then make the decisions based on your heart, as we've talked about in the intuition module, and then you become naturally good at something. Maybe it's art, maybe it's drawing, maybe it's making furniture, maybe it's being empathetic with animals, and you might end up working with horses or with dogs, or it's fishing, and maybe you become a fishing instructor. I don't freaking know, but right now in the Western world, and we're so fortunate to have that, actually, everybody can follow their hearts. It's just about receiving this voice and then having the courage to follow through. So that's basically the overall life strategy. Do what's fun. You don't need to do what's not fun to you, what you don't like in the long term. Yes, sometimes you need to do that, but this is kind of more an emergency, to kind of push yourself to do the things that you don't want to do. It's just stupid, and you create havoc for yourself, and by you being unhappy with yourself, you actually create a lot of havoc for the world, because all the people who've done great havoc to the world were truly unhappy people. I mean, the people who do the high school shooting, or a person who's like a dictator of some kind, or a ruler, or a violent person in any form. Are those people happy? Yes or no? Do those people follow their heart? Well, you know the answer. So it's also your responsibility. So that's basically the life practice, you see. Do what you love. And how do you find it? Look within. Feel within. Check with your heart. Find what you love, become naturally good at something, and then enrich other people on the way as you go. And that's like a very simplistic formula. It's nothing like, okay, something enlightening new that I've learned. Of course that's not new, and of course you know that. But the thing is, do you do that? And this is then related to fears, to kind of courage to go through the fears of actually following our heart. That's the basic life practice. The most basic life practice. Follow your heart, and everything else will be revealed to you. That's it. Overall life strategy, done. That's it. So yes, see you in the next video.
make a compilation from that.
So now, since we know that the point is not to wanting to be different than we are, remember the most important fundamental misconception that in order to be happy, I need to be different than I am, or in order for anything that I want to make work to be different than I am, is the fundamental misconception. To alter ourselves in order to reach an altered set of life circumstances is the fundamental misconception. Being yourself, remain grounded, and then see the life circumstances change, this is the way to go. So, in having said that, and in also having seen that our overall life strategy is basically to follow your heart and have fun. And then you become naturally good at something because you practice without effort, and the presence and attention to detail flows into your work. That attracts customers that want to pay good money for that because it's quality work or quality service, whatever that is. You see, it relates to you. Having said that, now we want to be talking about self-centeredness. So the difference between self-centeredness and egocentrism is vast. Egocentrism is basically thinking about others and then making it about yourself. Whether self-centeredness is thinking about yourself, but it's actually for others. You see what I mean? When you're egocentric, you're kind of very dependent upon other people's approval or their opinions, or if that's
good,
not what's most
Holy
important
shit.
for the egocentric person, then it is about their own success, kind of the way they are seen. This is all about. Egocentrism is about getting something from other people, and you wouldn't take from other people if you wouldn't need it. So you see, in actually thinking about yourself all the time, it's actually about the others.
Dang,
You see,
man,
you
this
think
is
about
fucking
others
brilliant.
much more than yourself, actually, and then trying to take from them because you perceive them to have something that you don't have, and that's why you actually think about yourself. So what can I take from others? Whether in self-centeredness, you're actually thinking about yourself first, and then realize that everybody else benefits from that as well. Because if you remain in your core, like coming from the essence of who you are, if you are yourself, and if you have fun the way you like it. What do I mean by that? Have fun the way you like it. Yes, do what you like, you see? And then it will affect other people as well. If you remain centered, if you stay in your core essence, and if you are yourself, you do your thing, you are in balance, you don't get mad at other people on a regular basis. You know, it's not your default state of like being pissed off at others and feeling put down and, you know, poisoning the energy at work with you complaining. This is when people actually think about others and then make it about themselves. This is egocentrism. Actually, the opinion of others is very important to those people. So self-centeredness is like remaining focused on yourself. I mean, what else would you do? At first, you've got to make sure you are happy, not to the detriment of others. I don't mean that, but you will see that when you stay in your center first and you really listen and to your heart, follow your heart, and you tune within, that all other people that you touch, they're being affected, impacted by you in a positive way, effortlessly, without you doing anything. It's just, you know, you packing in your groceries and you stand there and you have like this little present smile and you do everything with presents. And other people think like, wow, you know, what a kind person. Or it just naturally you want to give because there's nothing that you need when you focus on yourself first. You meet your own needs in the sense that you learn that the needs cannot be truly satisfied by somebody else. The need, kind of the desire to fill yourself up, that disappears when you focus on yourself first. So that's the value of self-centeredness, you know. Let the people come to you that want to come. You see, the strategy is you are yourself. And then some people feel attracted to you, some people don't. And you let the people that feel attracted to you come to you. Might it be in partnership or in business partnership or just at your workplace. You see, you are yourself. You do your thing. and you let a workplace come to you by you just remaining open. Doesn't mean that you don't, that you know, at some point you might need to write an application for that job. I don't mean to do nothing, but I mean stay centered, be yourself, and kind of invite, instead of going after expectations of other people, kind of going after the people and altering yourself. Self-centeredness, this is what I mean by that. So being independent from other people's approval is big, is truly huge in implementing that. And you will see, you know, once you tune in with your own motives and your intuition and your heart, you will see it's get more and more subtle. You more and more unveil, uncover, reveal more and more things about yourself and more subtleties about your need for approval. And don't judge yourself, that's normal. That's part of our core wound, wanting to be different than we are, because the only reason why we would want to be different than we are is actually for approval and for love, signs of affection. So it's nothing bad with being selfish if it's used in the right word. Again, just briefly the distinction, selfishness in one sense could mean you're actually very dependent upon other people's opinion, and because you have something to take from them, you make it all about me, like all about you. Like, what can I take? What do I need? How do I fill myself? Whether the real selfishness that I understand now by saying self-centeredness and selfishness, kind of the second sense to apply that is actually sort yourself out first. Take you first, and also be okay that on the way of becoming you will step on somebody's toes and you won't be perfect all the time. You will mess up, but there's no way around. You know, as long as you walk the way of the heart, you're doing everything right, in the sense of generally, strategy-wise. You see, of course, the little steps, you have something to learn on the way. You can't imagine like, I now follow my heart, now I'm going to be perfect. That's not the case. But that is it, self-centeredness. So don't be, that's the point, you see. Don't judge yourself, don't blame yourself, don't make yourself wrong for focusing on yourself first. This is it, that's the key. So with that being said, see you in the next video.
Best public speaking so far. It's decent shit, man. Could have published it.
Welcome back. Now another video that I find truly important for implementing that, because the most fundamental one of the most fundamental misconceptions is also to see our goal too much as a goal, because on one hand the goal is a goal and on the other hand it is not a goal. So what do I mean by that? We've stated in the first module that our goal is aliveness. You see, and the way to go about it is by following our heart, tuning in with our feelings. You know, getting in touch with our feelings and then following our heart. So it is the goal in the sense of this is where we see the path of following our heart leads us. This is kind of what we want. And there is nothing wrong with wanting something, but it is not the goal in the sense that you need to keep your goal in mind in order to reach it. Quite the opposite way. Like looking for the goal in the process prevents and delays it. We know what we want and why we want it. Once that is set, it's kind of clear, it feels right to us, like yes, of course, I want to be more alive, and I see that this is my way to a magnificent life, and I see that getting in touch with my emotions and feelings, like feelings in general, will get me to that place of aliveness. I now see that. If I tune in, that makes sense to me. But then you need to let go of the goal of aliveness and don't kind of tune in with how alive am I right now? That's the wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is, what is right here and right now? You see? Staying with what is right now. And
I might disagree.
You see,
perspective now. I think we should measure that.
The goal is aliveness, but if we keep the goal in mind while we are going about our lives, we are actually not in the present. And this is the entry gate towards aliveness. You see, by wanting to be alive, we are with a goal in the future. And exactly this being in the future prevents us from actually feeling alive right here and right now. Because we do feel alive right here and right now when we don't have anything in mind. Then we naturally feel alive. But by wanting to be alive, we have something in mind, which prevents feeling alive. You see that? So the goal, having that in mind, prevents the goal and delays it. So let go of the goal. Easier said than done, I know. Don't judge yourself again. Everything that happens is perfectly fine. Sometimes you can do it effortlessly. You kind of drop into aliveness, and at other points you are thinking about the goal. How would it be? You know, you're in your mind, and that's fine. But it's necessary to understand that wanting it prevents it, because letting go of the wanting makes it arise. And also you wanting not to want it is still a wanting. So you can't get rid of the wanting by defying and pushing it away, you see? Seeing the futility, that's the remedy. Now, the goal, aliveness, is a concept. You know, the real aliveness is here and not where we imagine it to be. Also that, you know, when we're in our mind with a goal, it is only a concept. We can kind of up front feel into what it would feel like, but it's still made up. It's not the real thing. The real thing is right now, right here. And if it's a very cheap trade-off to go with the goal in the mind instead of with what is here. But it's of course easier because that which is here is pretty damn real. I should say, even if it's not, but it feels very real. So the now is the entry gate to the aliveness that we want, and not the future goal in our mind. That's what I wanted to get to. So the goal is the goal, but it's not to be made a goal. Good to have it set, and then forget. Set it and forget it. This is it. Thank you. See you in the next video.
I just did what I could with what I had, man. It's kind of ugly as TV. It's fine, man. We used the resources we had at that point. It's alright. Wasn't even that bad. You could have fucking sold this. Together with like good community support, people would be like, $4.95, motherfucker? But some would have paid it, I guess. Together with live seminars, yeah, but I also just didn't know what I was going to do. So I just had to get the courage to start the seminars as well. Interesting. Super interesting. I Am That, this amazing book, man. Classics from all of these centuries. We are going to make this work. Being a voracious reader again, just being, narrow in my focus. I know my time will come. It will just take some more years. It's fine. It's completely fine. Loving it. I am going to make this successful. Fucking sloth, but being a hard-working spiritual teacher.
I just had to laugh so hard right now because I was yesterday I was watching these infomercials in order to learn more marketing and how to communicate and all those things, and there's one infomercial guy who built this kind of device in order to roast chickens, and it turns automatically, and you just set it and forget it. And that was his kind of pitch, and the same applies to goal setting. Set it and forget it, because the only way to get to your goal is actually to let go in the process and to stay focused, attention to detail, without losing yourself in the detail in the process. And then you really reach the goal. And this is, by the way, why I believe time-based goals can be hard for practitioners, beginning practitioners, to start setting goals. It's more about, okay, what's the outcome? What do I want? And then set it and forget it. Set the goal, let go of the goal, and then walked away with attention to detail. Just as a little side note learning for the people who are truly into goal setting, there's some value in that massively, because you redirect your focus to what you want and you are actually clear once you set the goal. But also letting go, in the process in order to access the state of flow, also truly important. So now, what's this video all about? What's the way? Getting in touch with our feelings. We said that our motivation, we've been talking about the goal, which is not a goal, aliveness, and then now how to get there, what's the way? And we said getting in touch with our feelings. That is it. But the misconception here is that it is not practice all the way, but we need to practice at first, also willfully, in order so that it becomes automatic in the future. So it's not to always check whether you're practicing. At some point it will be getting automatic, because it's not the point in life, in the practice of living our life, to do something that doesn't naturally arise. At the end, we want to come to the genuine act of this coming genuinely, naturally, spontaneously through you, but it makes sense to at first raise your awareness towards those things and actually do the practices that we've outlined in this course. So this being said, it means it becomes automatic at a time, so don't force yourself to keep going with the practice once it vanishes. And again here, when is that point? Feel it out, tune in with your heart, it knows. This applies to everything. Feel it out, listen to your heart, tune in with the intuition. That's why it's so important. And excuse me, please, don't judge yourself for not knowing or making mistakes. You will make mistakes and you will judge yourself. That's all part of the way. It is to be expected. That's okay. So do not judge yourself for those. And also the self-obsession trap. A big trap that I see, also have seen in myself and also many others on this way, is the self-obsession trap. That means with tuning in with your feelings too much, you make it all about yourself. How do I feel? Am I correct? Do I feel right? Is that good? Does it feel good? And makes you more and more looking for comfort, because comfort is also the good feeling. The trap here is to look for the good feelings instead of what feels right. And by tuning in with your feelings, it can happen that it's too much self-obsession, too much about, am I getting everything right? Am I getting what I need? Are my emotional needs met? There's a place for that, but make sure you feel it out. And yeah, you need to feel it out for yourself, but do not fall into this trap and become too self-obsessed with that. And also balance between the inner work and engagement with the world. You see, meditating all day on your couch will get you just so far, because at some point life calls you for interaction with life. This is what we're actually meant to be doing, to interact with life. We are life. So engaging with life without you thinking that you need to work on yourself just by yourself in your little flat and meditate all day, this can miss the point. It can be your way, but it can also miss the point, in the same way as only setting goals and only striving. Feel it out, what feels right, and everything else will come. So this is the way, getting in touch with our feelings, letting it go after a while when it feels right, and also do not become too self-obsessed. This is the big trap. Many people need to go through this in order to realize this themselves. So there's a place for a period of time where you're really truly self-obsessed and are very, very sensitive to your feelings, but you will grow out of that. And I just want to give you a little perspective that you will grow out of that eventually. So with that being said, see you in the next video. Set it and forget it. Welcome back. Now, let us recapture the misconceptions that we've also been already been speaking about in the chapter, in the module on emotions, because what is usually understood as an emotion is not necessarily what an emotion is, nor what we understand by an emotion. So what is an emotion not? Mixing a part of your being with your entirety. That means an emotion is part of you, it's not your entire being. And when you say, I am angry, I am very well aware that this is just a pattern of speech, but the truth is also many patterns of speech do actually contain some truth in the way we really feel that way. Like when we say we are angry, we really feel like our being right now is overlayered by angriness, kind of angriness overtaking us, and we become angry in the sense of what is our core sense of essence of what we are. And when we're angry, oftentimes this has some identity component to it. So being aware of that, mixing a part of your being with your entire being, that's not it. You witness the anger, you still remain the conscious entity within, like the consciousness, the living, breathing organism, and you are not angry. Anger is witnessed and registered in your system. And also by practicing those patterns of speech, even if they don't seem authentic in the first place, it can make sense to really also get beyond this identification. And also mixing emotions with body sensations. Emotions are not the body sensations, emotions are something different, which makes it even harder to grasp. If you say, oh, I got the goosebumps, or, I have like my heart's beating, that's not the emotion, it's an effect of the emotion, but it's not the emotion itself. Also mixing emotions with reactions and expressions. You getting angry, wanting to hit somebody, having those fantasies. You being sad, wanting to shut down and like laying down on your bed and weep. And expressions of like screaming, shouting, yawning, sighing, whatever that might be. This is not the emotion as well. These come after the emotion in order to kind of canalize those energies and purge yourself of those energies, kind of get rid of those energies. But this is not the emotion itself. The emotion itself actually cannot be spoken. It's something that we cannot put into words. And I want you to understand that whenever we try to put words and say, this is it, what an emotion is, we are mistaken, because the emotion can most aptly be expressed as an
Skin is clear.
This. Yes, this is it. I know that. This feels like and this feels more like whatever, you see? But the words we put to them is not it. And also mixing the emotions with action impulses, running away from the emotion, running towards it, running into it, running against it. What we've been speaking about in the chapter on emotions, big time, wanting to defy the emotion, running into the emotion, kind of dwelling on the emotion, running away, defying it. That's not it. This is not the emotion. This is your reaction to the emotion, wanting to push it away, wanting to distract yourself, all those mechanisms that we usually employ. This is not the emotion itself. So, furthermore, the existential trap. Seeking happiness in the emotions is a big, big misconception, and I would like to raise your awareness towards that point. Happiness is never found in the emotions, just a cheap equivalent of that if we have never touched upon deep fulfillment. And how we touch upon deep fulfillment, there was an entire module on that where we were talking about the deeper sentiments and fulfillment. Once we've tasted that, we do not seek for happiness in emotions anymore, or at least not to this majestic degree that we used to. So, but if we've never touched upon that, this is the only thing we can get. Like naturally, we seek for those because we need to fill ourselves with fulfillment. You see, when we don't feel it, we need something because that's our nature. And if we're split off from this default state that is our nature, we crave to be natural. We crave to feel fulfilled. So naturally, we kind of crave those things that give us those emotions. But this is the existential trap, seeking happiness in the emotions. Not it. Definitely not it. And this creates so much suffering in the world. It is incredible. And also for yourself. See if it applies to you. And something that I call the Vipassana trap. There is a school of meditation that basically teaches you to disidentify with the emotions. Now, whether that's totally correct, we can argue if some Vipassana person is here, but generally, I just named the trap after that. So, aloofness towards emotions is the trap that I mean. And there is a difference between identification and dissociation. Like disidentification and dissociation, that's what I mean. Like usually we start out from a place of identifying with our emotions. We said this before. We say we are sad, we are angry, we are jealous, we are happy, whatever we are. We are that. It has some identity component. And there is no difference between this identification, which leads to you fully feeling the emotion. But you see, it's nothing more, kind of can be likened to like wind touching your skin. This is nothing personal. You don't take the wind personal, it's not part of your being. At first, it can be seen that we are all, I don't mean that. Like you don't usually see that the wind is part of yourself. But the emotions, we do feel like that. So this is the power of disidentification. Dissociation, on the other hand, means being split off. Like you still remaining this feeling of this is part of my identity, but you just step out of that and kind of look at that from a dissociated place, but it still stays part of your identity, and that's the trap. Dissociation from your emotions, because this is not the point. The purpose why we have feelings is to feel them. That's why they are called feelings, because life wants us to feel them. Makes sense, doesn't it? And in becoming aloof, training ourselves to be aloof, this is the misconception. Now, aloofness naturally arises with disidentification, but to train yourself for aloofness is not the right path. Training yourself to feel, go into and using what is right here in this present as an entry gate, letting yourself be pulled into the present by what is there and through it into aliveness, into the unconditioned default state of happiness and fulfillment. Another big misconception, the wanting to be aloof because we don't want to feel those emotions. You see? Also changing emotions, they don't need to be altered. I mean, emotions are only energetic patterns within ourselves. They can be altered, but they don't need to be altered. It is one way, but it requires like a true feeling for the emotion is actually not what you are. Then they can be altered, you know? But if you really believe the emotion is part of I am happy, I am jealous, this am component is still there, then you just alter yourself when you alter your emotions. And that this doesn't work, we've seen in past videos, we've been talking about this. So these are misconceptions about emotions. Please take them in, please review them, and it makes sense to at least take the module number 9 and review those lessons when you need them. Like now you've gone through the entire course, I hope, at once, and I believe that's a good thing to do. And then take an only module 9 and review that regularly, and everything else just when it's needed. Because here you really get the what ifs. That's what we said before. The how-tos, you now know intuitively. You don't forget them. If it hit you emotionally, like how to re-look at your life, it is there. It comes when it's needed. But the what ifs, they will change as you go along. So yes, with this being said, see you in the next video.
I am this teacher. Let's go.
Welcome back. Now we have spoken. I don't switch off the video, I just continue. We have spoken about emotions before, and now it's about intuition. So see, there are some fundamental misconceptions about intuition that I would like to address here. Number one is, what feels right is not what feels good. We've heard this before, but it's important enough so that we stress that again. It's not about learning a lot. It's about learning deep. A few things, but really ingrained. Yes, so what feels right, that's what intuition is, doing what feels right. But that's not necessarily what feels good. So what feels good is going for comfort. What feels right is mostly going for discomfort through the initial discomfort to the place of truth. And truth often hurts, but truth heals. So not going for comfort, going for truth. Don't go for what feels good, go for what feels right. And also, sometimes we need to do things that we otherwise wouldn't do when the situation calls for it. There's a trap when you start practicing to follow your heart that you get lost in, well, is that right for me? Does it feel right for me right now? Let's feel it out. If you really make it a practice to feel out how you go about your life, but truth heals. Truth. And truth often hurts, but truth heals. So not going for comfort, going for truth. Don't go for what feels good, go for what feels right. And also, sometimes we need to do things that we otherwise wouldn't do when the situation calls for it. There's a trap when you start practicing to follow your heart that you get lost in, well, is that right for me? Does it feel right for me right now? Let's feel it out. If you really make it a practice to feel out how you go about your life, then at some point you will feel resistance to doing things that life calls for but that you don't feel like. And the fundamental distinction here is, sometimes, as I said, life calls for something, if it's kind of emergency. But to do things that you otherwise wouldn't do unless you had some voice in your mind telling you that it makes sense for this reason, or otherwise you won't reach that goal, or for whatever reason, this is where we need to readjust. But do not shy away from, for example, like take my example. I do my work here, I have my creative work, and I kind of get an expectation still at some point of what do I want to get done in a day, and then some emergency happens and the whole plan is like thrown out. And to expect that this will be happening, and then to do things that I actually don't feel like doing, but it's like an emergency situation and I just got to step in and I just got to address those things because it's like an emergency. I wouldn't willfully choose it if I had a choice, but right now sometimes you need to address those things. For example, somebody calling you and really having like a bad time, somebody who's truly some of your good friends. At this point, I wouldn't, for example, say, well, call me in like 3 hours, I'm still like working, recording videos. Or somebody needs to be driven to the hospital, or something like that. You see what I say? Yes, like, okay. And also don't get lost in your feelings and self-obsession. We had the self-obsession trap before. It's difficult to distinguish, and you also need to feel that out. This is kind of the meta-intuition. Like, intuit how you go about living from a place of intuition. You see? And do not get too self-obsessed. At the end, intuition leads you to a selfless life. That means first you center on yourself, sort yourself out, and then there's no reason to think about yourself because all your problems are solved, your life is great, and you are most of the time like very fulfilled, truly fulfilled, and you know there's nothing else to come. You found this place of peace, you know, you rest within yourself and you know like your journey has ended. When this has happened, everything else that you need to do or that you feel like doing is just, you know, pure giving. So self-obsession in the process needs to be overcome at the end. Intuiting what's right for you, feeling out what's right for you needs to be overcome, but this will naturally happen. I'm just saying, be aware in the process of not to become too self-obsessed in following your heart. As I said, following your heart needs to be transcended because when it's the genuine act, you don't do it anymore, it kind of happens spontaneously, and this is when you really feel, okay, now you just serve whatever you do. You just light other people up and inspire in whatever you do. That's it. So, with this being said, see you in the next video. Now, I want to speak again on acceptance and what it really means. Because I believe this is not the only course that you've ever taken, or this is not the only, like you've listened to audiobooks before, read books before, listened to other people telling you about acceptance. If you're like on the work of yourself in like spiritual personal development, you come across this as well. But I do feel that it's most often not really understood in the misconceptions that can be made, so that's why I really want to speak again about what acceptance really means and what it doesn't mean. So acceptance, first of all, in the feelings, not in the situation. Yes, acceptance is in the feelings, it's not in the circumstance. It doesn't mean that, first of all, okay, my car broke down, I accept that. Acceptance leads you to the feelings, and the feelings are the entry gate to aliveness in the present moment towards fulfillment. So acceptance, first of all, does not primarily mean the set of life circumstances, the situation. It does primarily mean the feeling that this situation evokes. First important distinction. And then it doesn't mean approval. Acceptance doesn't mean, hey, yoo-hoo, my car broke down. Doesn't mean approval. Means, look which feelings come up. It also doesn't imply an act. Acceptance doesn't mean now I have to do acceptance. Yes, there is a time and place for an acceptance and gratitude practice or meditation. But acceptance is the genuine act. And the genuine act cannot be faked. It cannot be done. Yes, there's value in going over past experiences and correcting them, so to speak, like reviewing them in your mind from a place of giving acceptance to them. But I do not mean the act of doing, I mean the genuine act. Also, acceptance doesn't mean restraining yourself from an act of unacceptance. You know, some situation arises and you're unacceptant of that, and then you correct it because you're meant to be acceptant. This is not it. What would be acceptance would mean, oh, I'm unacceptant right now. And you accept that. Seeing, that's what's here. This is acceptance. Not nodding, not saying yes. Acceptance is saying nothing. That's what it means. Not a doing, just basically the act of not doing anything at all, but not pushing it out again. Kind of, when unacceptance is an act, the opposite of unacceptance, being acceptance, is not necessarily an act too. In fact, it is not an act. It is kind of the unact. No act, no act. Just letting it be, you know? So not restraining yourself from unacceptance. Meaning, when you're unacceptant, don't say, I must not. And also not correcting the unacceptance once it happens. Unacceptance is probably the most important practice for acceptance anyway, because this is something that we don't want. And then we really realize, do we come from a place of, I want to be different than I am unacceptant, but I want to be acceptant? Do we come from that place? And then we are mistaken. Or the other place we could come from, okay, everything that there is right here and right now, take it in and I use that for my life practice. You see? In order to become more alive, using what's there. If unacceptance is there, use that. Don't reject anything that happens. It means seeing that our feelings are valid and important to be felt. Acceptance also means that. Our feelings are important and valid. Everything that you feel is there for a reason. That's what I mean with validity. There's a reason for that there, even if you don't see it. But it's not like some stupid coincidence that you feel this feeling. And it's important because the purpose of the feelings, as I said, is that they want to be felt. To feel them. That's the purpose of feelings, why we have them. Because they need to be felt. So it's important to do that. Otherwise, we neglect the most important life practice. And this is living from a place of heart, following your heart. And the heart says, look at what's there. So it's important and valid. Feelings are important to be felt, and they are valid. Seeing that is acceptance. Also, acceptance is beyond our evaluation. As I said, acceptance is not a yes, it's not a knowing. It's a spontaneous arising without evaluation of good or bad, helpful or not helpful. Does it serve me? Does it not? Is it good or not? Acceptance is the genuine act, and you can't train yourself to do the genuine act. But by letting go, not wanting to be acceptant anymore, letting go of wanting to be different than you are, stay where you are, and acceptance will naturally arise. And once you see you can actually accept your unacceptance, then true acceptance as the background kind of arises. We've talked about the default state before, being kind of the background. Acceptance as well. It is like when there's nothing happening, this is called acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean yes. Acceptance means silence. And with that being said, see you in the next video. Welcome back. Now, this module is all about integration and implementation. How do we take what we've so hard prepared for, how do we take what we've learned and implement that so we actually have results that do stick and we make it work for our life, so we actually see some changes. But it's up to you. Take your responsibility back. It's not for me to change you. It's on to you to be inspired and to let the change happen. Also not to change yourself. This is still a wanting to be different than we are. You see that? It's letting the change happen by getting in touch with the feelings. The only practice that we need, getting in touch. So, following through on this course, what are the misconceptions that can be made in order to not follow through on this course? On one hand, being hard on yourself for not following through. It's natural and normal that you won't follow through in some things. Don't expect that everything now holistically in your life will totally change in this very moment. I do not believe this is accurate. So do expect that you will not follow through on some things and stop being hard on yourself. This is still wanting to be different than you are. You know, you have some expectations of, yes, this is the way it's gonna go, then it goes differently and then you're hard on yourself. The time you're being hard on yourself can be so much easier used in productive and creative ways to actually figure out what have I learned from that. But this is also a practice, you know. There will be times where you're hard on yourself, where you judge yourself, where you condemn yourself and this course and everything else, the world and your friends. But to see that, once you practice that, getting out of that quickly, by feeling it through, accepting that this is right here and right now, feeling it through, you shorten the time and then at some point it vanishes and you're not hard on yourself again. So this is also something that I want to say. Do not be hard on yourself. Don't be hard on yourself for being hard on yourself. You see what I mean? We always find a reason to beat ourselves up. If we still live from the place of I need to be different than I am, we always find something that needs to be different. We need to let go of that. So fail and get up. Make mistakes, fail, part of the way, get up and go on. This is a practice. Is that easy? Hell no. But is it worth practicing? Freak yeah. So it's not to be expected to implement and the good and certain things and not implementing or being weak at other things. You know, it's not about only the things that you're strong at and totally neglecting what you're weak at. Seeing everything. The things that work out well and the things that work out not so well yet. Embracing it all. And another pitfall is rejecting this entire course, kind of the general method that this course gives you and teaches, because you reject one part of it. We can also see that in people. One characteristic we don't like and we reject the entire person. Something in here that kind of was really odd tasting to you, kind of a sour aftertaste, and you reject the entire course because you say if he has said that, if he believes that, then the entire thing is I throw it out. Do not do that. Yes, some things that you will approve of and agree with, some things that you will disapprove of and disagree with, all fine. But extract the value for that and do not reject the entirety of this course, because, I mean, then it brings you just to the next course. That's the reason. You will buy another course, trying to get you to the point that you actually don't need another course, which is my outcome for you, that you don't need actually this course anymore, any other course anymore. But with rejecting the entirety, it brings you to the next one. And the major obstacle. Fear giving rise to thought patterns that tell you to discard the idea of living from a place of intuition. This is also to be expected. Yes. Like, it is fear loading this practice of being yourself and following your heart. It needs to be expected that it will come up with like a multitude of reasons why those things won't work, why this course is stupid, why all the reasons this can be expected. So do expect that. You see, this is part of the way. But in expecting that you can catch yourself, because every thought pattern that kind of is very charged with emotional energy that tells you it doesn't work because of this and that carries this kind of emotional load when we are identified with this thought, there we see it really comes out of fear. And this needs to be inquired about, because most of the time actually doing what we are fearful of, kind of doing exactly what the thoughts want to talk us out of, is mostly what we really need to do. So yeah. Now, how to implement? How to actually take this and implement that so it's ingrained and it comes, it's a natural, spontaneous act. So, as I said, I maybe said this before, but once again, you're utterly alone with that, you know. I've given you the general notes on you to implement the highly specifics of how do I make this work for me. Take help, don't give away your responsibility. Like, with taking responsibility, I don't mean don't let yourself be helped. Another misconception. Take help, of course, but don't be reliant on that in the sense of, if I don't get this help, then I can't do it. You can do it. Everything that your heart suggests can be done. So take help, but don't give away your responsibility. Also, take it back now if you still believe there's something yet to come that he needs to tell me. I've told you the most important thing, that is listen to your heart. From that point on, your heart tells you everything you need. I'm just here to facilitate, kind of be a channel for the voice of life that's already within you, kind of speaking through me to you. But your heart attracted this course and me so that I can tell you that, give you the most important practice, that is follow your heart and listen to that. So that's the first real test of your intuition. Isn't that great? Now it really starts already. How to implement this course, what you do, in what way do you implement which things, because you can't implement everything at once. But you can't also strategize. First the intuition, and then this, and then that. I've done this kind of strategizing kind of also for you, with you, but it's not the way it necessarily happens. In the same way as life, you know, when you see like a bush grow, it grows like, you know, a flower here and a leaf there. It's like all over the place. A thorn there, it's all over the place. And the roots, it's all over the place again. So in the same way, your growth, it's not linear. So it's the real test of intuition. Just surrender and let it happen, watch it happen, and stay with the practice of like, what is here, right now, right here, entry door, that is it. So, and not knowing what to do, when, how, you know, you have the opportunity to practice doing what feels right, embracing the chaos, embracing uncertainty, and practice decisive action on the small scale. You don't know what the heck is going on, you just know what feels right, and you're decisive even if you don't know why. It's totally uncertain, it's totally chaotic, but you just know this is what I gotta do, practice decisive action. And in this way, like, we practice life. This is why it's so close to my heart, this course. We practice life, and I believe we need to learn life. It's just that certain people need a certain verbiage, a certain kind of style of message to get to that. You know, and the basic lessons of life we all have to learn. Otherwise, we continue suffering and die without and passing that on. You see, when the lessons that we haven't learned, we kind of unconsciously pass them on to our kids, and they need to learn them because we've never done that. So we practice life here. Like, there's nothing more important than actually doing what I say, and that sounds very, very kind of, whew, what kind of a statement. But here's the thing, it's not in the words that come from this particular mouth, it is the lessons of life. And whether you hear it from my mouth or you hear it from the voice of your heart, better from the voice of your heart. But you see, those lessons, that's the most important thing to learn. Learn about life, how life works. Maybe the reason why my life doesn't work is because I don't know how life works. What a truth. So learn how life works, and this is what we practice here. Real life skills. So everything that there is part of life. So everything that we feel that is right now, right here, part of life. So we practice with that. Rejecting something of life is stupid, because it's not the way life is. Life embraces everything. And so we need to become more like life, embracing everything, so we become one with life, and in this way one with our true essence and identity, and only in this way we can be ourselves. And when we are ourselves, we are happy and fulfilled, our life works out, we are at ease, we have peace of mind, and we have more than we can ever ask for. So it's worth it. So yes, and go review certain modules when you need them. You know, this is also how to implement them. Don't go through the entire course again, unless it feels right, you know, listen to your own heart. But the ones that speak to you, where you really try to tune in after you finish those videos to feel out if there's something more in there that I haven't gotten. This is how I go about all the stuff I educate myself still continuously with, is sometimes I feel in some kind of audio program or some book, at some chapter on some page, there is something. Right now I don't get it, so I lay it aside, and at some point, you know, maybe I haven't looked at this book for like a year and a half, and then I take it out and I know exactly this chapter. It comes through out of intuition. I don't know where it comes from, but for some reason, right now is the right moment. My intuition, my bodily intelligence knows that, and I take on that page and it's exactly there. And exactly that sentence triggers something that I truly need in this moment. That's the power of intuition. So review those modules when we need them. And once again, it's about life. There's nothing more important but learning about how life works so you can make your life work. Enough for the rant. See you in the next video.
To be clipped. To be clipped, man. Very nice. Good. Then go lunch. It's easy.
Well, the last video for this module on integration. Like we've said, the outcome for this module is integration, implementation, taking what we've so well prepared for, what we have learned, and integrate them. And my true heartfelt kind of mission in like my outcome personally for you was to really give you the sense of the nuances that come when you actually live from that place and practice that. The things that you learn on the way that I believe can be very, very valuable for you, because the how-tos are pretty simple to explain, but the what-ifs are the personal stuff that you really need to figure out for yourself. And I hope to have provided some guidelines and some guidance in the situations that can be hard, because one of those misconceptions, all of those that we've been talked about in this module, one of those can really take like years for you to uncover that yourself, that this was delusional. And I'm not so delusional to say like, okay, now I can kind of free you from all the mistakes that you need to make. I can't save you from any mistakes. You need to, like, mistakes are part of the way. But I believe this can substantially shorten the learning curve and really help implementing that. And if you come across some other traps, please let me know. Reach out to me and let me know so you can make this course even richer, even more applicable to the people that need it. Yes, and the next and final module. We have one more module to go. And in the next module, it's all about a higher purpose. And this is more kind of a laid-back module where we will look into the future. Now, basically, the course is finished. We've learned to prepare, we have prepared, we've learned about how to learn, we've learned, and we've implemented that. We've taken action, and we now know what many people actually fall into the traps, so we can kind of navigate around them. This is now officially finished. We have one more last module where it's about our higher purpose and how to find that, but this is more kind of a laid-back module on looking, having an outlook on the future. So the point of this video is take what you've learned and go implement that. Take action, go review those videos that you feel there's still something in there, and then see you in the next module.
We're still on, I guess. You saw me in shorts. Well, that's alright, I guess.
Well, the last video for this module on integration. Like we've said, the outcome for this module is integration, implementation, taken what we've so well prepared for, what we have learned, and integrate them. And my true heartfelt kind of mission in like my outcome personally for you was to really give you the sense of the nuances that come when you actually live from that place and practice that. The things that you learn on the way that I believe can be very, very valuable for you, because the how-tos are pretty simple to explain, but the what-ifs are the personal stuff that you really need to figure out for yourself. And I hope to have provided some guidelines and some guidance in the situations that can be hard, because one of those misconceptions, all of those that we've been talking about in this module, one of those can really take like years for you to uncover that yourself, that this was delusional. And I'm not so delusioned to say like, okay, now I can kind of free you from all the mistakes that you need to make. I can't save you from any mistakes. You need to, like, mistakes are part of the way. But I believe this can substantially shorten the learning curve and really help implementing that. And if you come across some other traps, please let me know. Reach out to me and let me know so you can make this course even richer, even more applicable to the people that need it. Yes, and the next and final module. We have one more module to go. And in the next module, it's all about a higher purpose. And this is more kind of a laid-back module where we will look into the future. Now, basically, the course is finished. We've learned to prepare, we have prepared, we've learned about how to learn, we've learned, and we've implemented that. We've taken action, and we now know what many people actually fall into the traps, so we can kind of navigate around them. This is now officially finished. We have one more last module where it's about our higher purpose and how to find that, but this is more kind of a laid-back module on looking, having an outlook on the future. So the point of this video is take what you've learned and go implement that. Take action, go review those videos that you feel there's still something in there, and then see you in the next module.
Super fascinating. Okay, let's get lunch.